Before we get right into the content, this video is sponsored by me. That's right, didn't see that coming, eh? This weekend, by the time I'm making this video, I'll be attending Indonesia's biggest anime convention, Comifero 20. Well, I won't be there because I don't live in Jakarta, but I do sell few items there, including a 6 art prints, photo cards, and also some pins. You might see me upload a few Genshin husbandos for the past few days in my community posts, and that's because these are the images I'm selling along with other few illustrations as well. If you're not into Genshin Impact, don't worry, we have other anime as well, including Honkai Star Rail, ZZZ, Jujutsu Kaisen, Dungeon Meshi, and a lot more. You might know an artist by the name of Nathan on Instagram, and he'll be selling his wares as well. He happens to be my junior, by the way. If you're interested in supporting me and my Indonesian friends, head over to Sapoto Studios Instagram account to see some of the catalogs, or you can visit the booth itself tomorrow at F51 to F52. Once again, booth F51 to F52. If you're planning to visit the convention or currently in Indonesia for Comifero itself, please say hello to my friends because I haven't met them in a very long time, and we'll be selling for 2 days as well. With that said, let's get right into the video. So not too long ago, I made a video recapping and theorizing everything in Paralogism Archon Quest. At the end, I talk about Unresolved chess game world boss, and it's definitely an interesting boss in so many ways. I only managed to talk about very few theories in that video because there's just a lot of things to talk about in that boss, and I have to stop, otherwise the video will be longer than I initially wanted. We haven't talked about the elements in this game, the metaphors, the king and the queen symbolism, Barbeloth's words, the connections with the Cryo Archon. There's just a lot. The battle takes place in the Imaginarium Theater, where it's also known to not only have a lot of cryptic metaphors, but also hinted at what we can expect in Outland during its release. Today, I want to continue that theory, connect the pieces from the past lore and what it could possibly mean for the future Northcry or even National Archon Quest. With that said, don't forget to give this video a like and comment so the channel can be noticed by the algorithm. My name is Nekogitsune and I make lore and commentary videos on this channel to keep you company. Of course, in order to understand the theory behind this video, you have to understand the lore behind the stage, including the boss attack patterns. If you already watched my previous video, you can skip to the timestamp below, but if you haven't or you want more detailed analysis, then allow me to tell you everything said in this boss battle. The stage's description is this. Legend has it that on the long river of nothingness, only after untold epochs of longing did the children who should not be earn themselves a name. For of late, mindful of the children's fate, the mages have ascended to the opening of a world gate. As for the boss itself, the name is the game before the gate. This is what it says. A soldier entity born into being through the skills of various members of the Hexenzirkel. Although their technological underpinnings are far from abstruse, and touch not upon the profound wisdom at the universe's core, yet as guards of the game's final threshold, they are a metaphor in and of themselves. This world may be governed by rules, but for those who manage to cross its verge, such constraints no longer apply. Basically, it's heavily implied that the Hexenzirkel are the gatekeepers of Teyvat, and this whole chess game is a huge metaphor of Teyvat's rules. We'll talk more about this in the theory section, but for now, let's move on to the mechanics. Unresolved chess game, a trial for Albedo and the Traveler to receive help from the Hexenzirkel to create life for Miniaturin. The first battle is against Alice, where the boss is following the rules of the chess game with slight tweaks here and there. The king absorbed all of the chess pieces and attacked the player with the chess pieces they absorbed. These enemies fight with Pyro and Electro, and they move according to the chess rules: kings 1 space, knights in an L, bishops on diagonals, rooks straight, pawns 1 to 2 forward, and queens can hit almost anywhere. The king sometimes ride the rook and the bishop to attack the player, and there are certain ways to counter them. With the rook, the only way to counter them is to let it hit the pawns, while the bishop can be countered by using Dendro, Cryo, or Pyro. After the king is defeated, the queen will be summoned to attack the player. The moment you defeat the queen, the king will reappear for you to finish the killing blow. After the first phase, your next opponent is Barbeloth and the rules of chess no longer apply. The attacks are a lot more aggressive, the king and the queen work with each other, and now they can use Hydra attacks. Both the king and the queen have their own one-hit KO moves that can bypass the elemental burst iframe. The only way to counter this is to freeze them. Sure, you can beat them while they're charging their attack, but they'll just charge again right after they come back to life. Speaking of that, when either the king or the queen is defeated, the other chess piece can revive them, but it comes at the cost half of their own HP. But once their HP gets really low on health, it can't revive its spawner anymore. This then makes them go into rage mode, boosting their attacks. This is pretty much the basics of this stage's lore and mechanics. Now let's get to the theory section. So one thing that pops in one's mind is of course the 7 Gnosis. The Winter Knight Lazo confirmed that the Animal Gnosis is the King piece, while the Geo Gnosis is the Rook piece. The Electro and Pyro Gnosis are shown in-game, but their equivalent remains ambiguous. This leaves the Dendro, Hydro, and Cryo Gnosis without their in-game model just yet. The Electro and Pyro Gnosis are odd because the Electro Gnosis look like either a bishop or a pawn. Some even says it's the Queen piece. The Pyro one is even weirder because it looks very different from the other Gnosis we have ever encountered so far. If we take a look at the attack pattern of these chess pieces, the bishop is using electro attacks while the rook moves forward with the pyro attacks. That in mind, we can assume that the electro gnosis is the bishop piece while the pyro gnosis is the rook piece. As for the other pieces, I can't say much honestly, but if we use the popular loading screen theory, then Dendro is also a bishop piece while Hydro and Cryo should be the knight piece. So what about the queen piece? And if you take a look at the gnosis closely, one element is missing, or in other words, one gnosis is missing. You see, one interesting thing in this battle is that Cryo is the main element to counter both the king and the queen. You have to freeze them in order to avoid the one-hit KO attack that, mind you, bypass the elemental burst immunity state, and as far as I know, only Constellation 6 Kukishinobu and Constellation 6 Hutao can counter this particular attack because they are left with 1 HP. Cryo might be the knight piece in theory, but what if the Cryo piece is the queen piece? According to the lore in Mondstadt's Arc Quest, TSARITSA cut all contact and held ill will towards Fenty specifically. Whatever the reason is, we still have no idea why, but it's possible that Fenty, or Barbados' role in the Cataclysm specifically, is quite large that TSARITSA hold ill will towards him. You see, Fenty himself may be the god of freedom, but he is also heavily associated with Istaroth, the ruler of time. Some even theorize that Fenty is heavily associated with death, especially the way every Animal Vision user always have at least one dead friend or a family that they lost. One part of me finds that Barbados is the one that killed TSAR during the Cataclysm in the Kainria, but another me also find that to be not the case, but also finds that Barbados could probably manipulate time. According to the lore, Barbados is a single thread of the 1,000 winds that roar through the northern lands. And 1,000 winds is a title that Istaroth has. Basically, just like Rukkhadevata, who is an avatar of the Irminsul, Barbados is a part of the ruler of time. Maybe this specifically is the reason why TSARITSA hates Barbados, because Barbados is heavily associated with Istaroth, or maybe he can bring Belly back to life, but he refused to do that. After all, if you remember, life and death is something that is quite critical in the world of Teyvat. And in Natlan's Archon Quest, if Renova take Capitanos' immortal life, then it will create a huge paradox that even Renova cannot handle. Although to be fair, that's very unlikely, but the point is that TSARITSA's hate towards Barbados could be a hint that her Gnosis is the queen piece. You may not remember, but just like Mondstadt, Snezhnaya is also not ruled by their Archon. They have mayors there that take care of the political issues such as Ivanova of the Hexenzirkel as the first mayor, and presumably Pulcinella as the second. In Long Night's Oath, we are hinted that there's another political organization that takes care of Snezhnaya, and Belly was the king of the Snowland phase. But what about the Travelers? Does he play a role in the chessboard as well? Maybe not, but possibly. Back in 1.x, we have a name card specifically for the Theater Mechanicus event. The description of this name card is interesting. You claim to have seen all of the mechanisms, but have you ever considered playing yourself as a pawn? This could mean that the Traveler is the pawn piece, and while the pawn is, well, let's say the weakest piece in the chess game, they're also the strongest. This is a chess rule that almost everyone forgets, but the pawn piece can become the queen, the rook, the bishop, and the knight piece after they reach the opposite end of the chessboard. The magic circle in the arena also hints at this as well. If you remember, the magic circle in this arena says Lucis in magno elemental rum ex culmine, or in magno elemental rum ex culmine lucis, which either way roughly translates to elements are from the pinnacle of light. One of you in my paralogism recap also mentioned there's the full version of this Latin text in the Abyss Lector's book, which read as, I am the one who speaks of the abyss to the world. Therefore, from the peak of light and the vastness of the elements, may the light of darkness from the abyss pour itself into our minds. Now with that context, we can assume that in the chessboard, there's the Abyss and the Heavenly Principles fighting against each other, and the Traveler could be on the Abyss side. But at the same time, the Traveler could be on the neither side and just do what they think is right. After all, they have Paimon who literally screams Celestia, but at the same time also shows her dislike towards the Heavenly Principles plenty of times in the story. What's funny is that Kukulkan calls her an emissary, which can either be the emissary of the Moon Sisters or the Heavenly Principles. You know, I feel like I mentioned Kukulkan many times in my videos, yet I never made a recap on the City of Tola World Quest. Let me know in the comments if you still want them. Either way, the point is, the Traveler is the pawn piece, and when they reach the end of their journey, that's when they finally become the queen piece to give the Heavenly Principles the checkmate. In this stage, the element choices here are interesting, that being Pyro, Electro, and Hydro, 3 of the patch elements. Gameplay-wise, these 3 elements can easily be disrupted by Cryo when it comes to their shield, and in Pyro, it's Cryo's strongest elemental reaction to dish out damage. But have you ever wondered to yourself why they only have these 3 elements and not include Cryo in as well? You see, the only other world boss in this game that uses multiple elements is Scaramouche, where he wields all elements except Dendro and Geo. In lore, it makes sense because he is the arcane wisdom and the Anemo is the perfect element to spread elements to attack the enemies. I suppose Ashtaha is also one of them, but he changes elements weekly and his primary element is Geo. Then there's the Unresolved chess game where the elements they chose specifically are the patch elements except Cryo. Remember, in the description of this stage, the whole thing is metaphor in and of itself, meaning everything in this chessboard has a deeper meaning. Well, I mean, I may look into this way too much, but I'm a lore channel and you subscribe to this channel for me to talk about ridiculous things, so bear with me. You see, in the second stage, you are required to bring Cryo in order to freeze the king and the queen when they charging their little blow. When the king charges, the queen will constantly apply Hydro to him, and when the queen charges, she will constantly apply Hydro to the player, so it's possible to only bring one Cryo as the elemental applicator if you can beat the enemy fast enough, or bring Jin to swirl the constant Hydro application towards yourself. Either way, it's possible to not bring Hydro to this stage, especially the queen is also resistant towards Hydro, but it is advised to do so. Anyways, freezing the enemy here is interesting because the king and the queen just so happens to exist in Snezhnaya, that being TSAR and the TSARITSA. Well, not really king and queen, but judging from the lore so far, they both exist together prior to the TSARITSA's ascension to archonhood. If you stayed to watch my attempt to beat the stage with Alhaitham, I mentioned that Cryo could be a metaphor of their fate. Whether the TSARITSA or the TSAR died first, their fate will remain the same. One will be enraged just like the TSARITSA, where she is affected the most from the cataclysm. One interesting thing about the elemental choices is that Pyro, Hydro, and Electro can react to all elements, but not Cryo because Cryo can't react to Dendro. The interesting part of it is that lore-wise, Cryo, Dendro, Anemo, and Geo have one thing in common. All of them are present to do their duties from the start. Maybe not Dendro, but given Irminsul changes, Nahida or Lesser Lord Kusanali is now part of the original 7 according to everyone in Teyvat except the Traveler. You can say Electro is one of them, but A was there behind the scenes, and everyone always believed that there is only one Electro Archon, but few people know that Electro Archon has a twin. Of course, that may not be relevant and just gameplay choices, but the points still stand that freezing them could also be part of their fate. Remember, according to Tartaglia, the TSARITSA is a very gentle soul but has to harden her heart to burn the old world. Just like in the stage, the queen wields the power of Hydro, as in implying her heart is as gentle as waters. The king is Pyro, meaning he could either be a fierce warrior or have a goofy personality. Either way, I would like to think that at the end, losing the Bellied Tsar could be the main reason why the TSARITSA wants to rebel against the Heavenly Principles. Before we continue, of course, I want you guys to know that I made a lot of effort by burning my brain to the ground and creating the script. So if you can support this channel by liking and subscribing, that'll help this channel a lot. With that said, let's continue. If you remember, Barbeloth says this: stare straight ahead and you see things as they appear. But change your perspective and you will see them as they are. Only by turning the world on its head can we see its true colors. But it begs the question, what do you see on the other side of this chessboard? Pawns gain true freedom the moment they gain legs with which to run. So in the spirit of Rhine-Daughter, I prepared a little surprise for you. Now, if we take the rules of pawn in chess game, this matches Barbeloth's message, where the pawn gains true freedom the moment they reach the other side of the chessboard. The second stage also shows the king and the queen no longer follow the rules of chess, where their attacks are a lot more free. That said, this stage could be a huge metaphor on one thing, and that is the true nature of Teyvat and perhaps Khaenri'ah. You see, the magic circle in this stage is a quote taken directly from the Abyss Lecture's book, so it's possible that Barbeloth is quoting on how the other side of this chessboard is Khaenri'ah, where it's a nation where gods can't gaze upon. In Parent Harry, we are hinted that the sea in Khaenri'ah is a metaphor for the space of stars, meaning Khaenri'ah is possibly the closest to the abyss. The Irminsul tree is also said to be planted downwards, which could mean that the tree itself is near Khaenri'ah. I mean, come on, the name of the Khaenri'ah king is Irmin, there has to be a connection. But let's take a deeper dive here. You see, the description of the boss says that those who manage to cross its verge, such constraints no longer apply, meaning those who manage to exit Teyvat will no longer be governed by its laws. Remember, the fate of each human in Teyvat is already predetermined by the stars. We learned that information from both Mona and Barbeloth, and Simulanka is basically the mirror of Teyvat, where the stars in that land are there to rule over the citizens. In this case, let's say the Khaenri'ahs succeed in overturning the heavenly principles, then they become the new ruler of Teyvat. Since they were under Teyvat, where they're seemingly the closest to the abyss, then the Khaenri'ahs, or so to say, either the Traveler's sibling or King Irmin, becomes the next queen piece. Hi there, editing me again. So basically, this one is gonna be short, but Barbeloth in Korean says something interesting. So you see, everything that she said is basically the same, but instead of perspective, she said 세상일, which basically means the world. So basically she said, if you see the world as is, you will see them as they seem. But turn the world upside down, you will see them as they truly are. Now of course, I'm not Korean, so if you speak Korean or you're Korean yourself, then feel free to correct me in the comments. All in all I'm saying is that it's pretty interesting to hear them in the Korean dub. The description of the ascended sample queen is interesting, which comes to the next and the final point. The queen was once known as the minister, but as the rules of the game evolved, it grew to become the most powerful piece and representation of the authority of the family behind the throne, a true symbol of gilded royalty. Perhaps the promotion of an ordinary foot soldier shares some similarities with the transmutation of matter, yet even should they manage to turn to gold, the most of a pawn might hope for is to be represented by an upturned rook. Now this is interesting because in the original chess game, the queen used to be the minister or vizier with only one square movement diagonally. The reason for the change was up to debate, but the most common opinion you can find is to speed up the game and as in a sign of true royalty in the 15th century where the king is always accompanied by the queen. The ending description of this piece is also interesting. An upturned rook, meaning the rook is upside down. While Fenty is one of the most mysterious characters in this game, Zhongli is the second most mysterious character. You see, both these archons are the true original 7. TSARITSA made a contract with Zhongli that ends all contracts in exchange of his Gnosis, which is quite interesting given the upturned rook here could mean they no longer serve as the rook anymore. See, it's so interesting because both Zhongli and TSARITSA made a contract that end all contracts. But when Paimon asks what it is, even he can't disclose it. But back to the queen. In the chess game, queen is the strongest piece because it can move anywhere it wants and also the fiercest chess piece in the game. When I make this video, there are things that confuse me, and that is how the Gnosis are determined. You see, part of me thinks that all of the Gnosis might be the king pieces, like all of them, but a part of me also thinks that might not be the case because Anemo and Gnosis are used differently in the Winter Knight Lazo. Some even say the Knight piece is the Electro Gnosis because it took away one of the pawns, which could presumably Signora. However, I was not fully on board with that idea because there's 11 Harbingers and there's only 8 pawns in a chess game. Then it hit me that the Cryo Gnosis could definitely be the queen piece. Of all factions in every nation, the Vatui are indeed the most active and even visit other nations for the sake of the Gnosis. But then let's say if they're not the queen, then there is one more piece that I can think about. The pawn piece. Now I want you to think of it for a second, okay? With the way Cryo works in this game, there's two pieces that I can think about. Either it's the queen piece or the pawn piece. The queen is straightforward enough, but the pawn piece is unique because the only way for the pawn to be promoted is by reaching the end of the chessboard. Shnezhnaya is the end of our journey at Teyvat's surface world. Then we are going to Khaenri'ah after that. No Archons in this game ever dare to oppose the Heavenly Principles despite their dislike towards them. But in a chess game, only the pawn has the power to ascend to higher being. The upturned rook here could mean Zhongli's contract to end all contracts, which could mean he is also aligned with the TSARITSA's view of the Heavenly Principles. He is the oldest Archon of them all after all, and not only that, he is willingly to give the Gnosis under a simple contract. It's simple how all of the Archons don't even value the Gnosis that much, and Nahida, who valued the Gnosis, is willingly to give it away after knowing the fake sky theory, and she knows full well that the Electro-Gnosis will bring disaster if it stays in Sumeru. So far, it was only Mavwika who valued the Gnosis, but it's possible because she is a human, she doesn't know full well the true value of a Gnosis. So here's a final proposal. TSARITSA could either be trying to revive the third descender, or another possibility, the queen wants to destroy all of the Gnosis, including hers. I only say this because all Archons except Pyra already know what the Gnosis is, and since it's heavily tied to the Heavenly Principles, then destroying it could be their way to gain their true freedom. The second stage of the chessboard also shows how free the king and the queen are, and if this is a metaphor of what happens if the Gnosis are destroyed, then it's possible that this is how they would be, but in exchange, they have to face the Heavenly Principles head on. Maybe this is the way for them to obtain the final samsara that Rene hinted at, and that is freedom from the gods. And with that, my brain is burning hot because all of these speculations are just wild. With that said, what's your opinion on this stage? Let me know in the comments. Jana!